morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Wednesday night photo show. My name is Scott. I'm the main photo instructor here at Dan's Camera City. Tonight we've got Ben with us.
Yay, how's it going, everyone?
And tonight is all about getting ready for this weekend. 4th of July is coming up. We're going to go out. We're going to get some great pictures of fireworks. We've got all kinds of stuff lined up for you and a ton of pictures and a ton of ideas. But first, we wanted to take a look at some new stuff that's happening at Dan's Camera City right now. So let's take a look at the gazebo's here.
Very cool.
So this was our big news this week, right?
Oh my gosh. I was actually out shooting some B-roll just behind the scenes for the Urban Photo Park in general. And all of a sudden I see this giant truck backing up. So we were able to get some shots of it actually being pretty much placed in, which was really exciting. This thing is huge.
Yeah, it looks enormous. Like, how big of a truck did they have to bring that thing in on?
It was a big truck. that was not
it looks really good.
Yeah, what a great placement. It's super shady. It feels really nice. I'm so excited to use this.
That's awesome. Yeah, we had a bunch of people out there this past weekend for our hands-on Tamron demo day. We ran a bunch of free seminars out in the photo park, and it's so cool. It's like it's turned into a real photo park, right? Like you can go out there and there's a whole bunch of stuff. We got wildlife and we got flowers and we got like bird feeders and stuff. And it's turned into, from being just kind of an open, empty field,
what a difference.
A really cool place to hang out and take pictures. And it's neat to see this sort of large chunk fall into place, because I plan on doing workshops and stuff out there and getting outside and taking pictures rather than sitting inside a stuffy classroom as much as we can, right?
It's so gorgeous. I mean, like the opportunity to be in shade, have a lecture, do a portrait session, do some teaching out there, or even just, honestly, I know my lunch break's about to get a lot more bougie. It's exciting stuff. But this is definitely one of the crowning jewels of, getting the Dan's Urban Photo Park just, all the way done. Hello to everybody that is tuning in with us. Nice to see your faces. As you guys have questions throughout the night, please leave comments below. We want to hear from you. It's not just Scott and I talking, but, we like to chat with you the whole time. So please, keep in touch with us. But yeah, this is so exciting for us to see.
Yeah, very, very cool. And it looks like I didn't really know exactly what it was going to look like. I mean, I know I'm the photo teacher and I'm supposed to have a handle on these things, but they ordered it like, we're getting a thing.
Okay.
It looks really good.
This is pretty exciting. I mean, this is a huge upgrade. We were actually just talking to one of our vendors for Nikon, and yes, Sandy, it does look great. But we don't know of anybody else that has something like this, an actual location outside, to not only be able to learn in an environment that's specifically for photography, but also to test out gear and just have lectures and stuff like this. So it's a really cool testing ground, but we're turning it into something very cool. We've put in a lot of work to make sure that local wildlife is safe and welcome and encouraged. A lot of sustainable plant life is being put in. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes.
Wildflowers, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
There's been a lot of work behind the scenes to kind of get this off the ground running. Tamron even, put it as one of their like designated birding sites, and we can definitely attest to the amount of birds that we have. So that's been really fun for people as well.
Yeah, we're kind of trying to keep a running list of, okay, what species have we seen out there? I'm trying to get some pictures of them.
Easily, we're in the 20s. Easily.
Yeah. Yeah, I will eat lunch back under the trees over here, and there's a downy woodpecker who lives back there. So
I got a blue jay that likes to come out during my time. So
there were like 3 or 4 of them last time I was out there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different aspects to enjoying that. So what else are we going to talk about tonight?
Well, I believe there's some brand new stuff rolling out tomorrow. Just to briefly touch on some new stuff, a little sneak preview of the next batch of sales that are coming up, right?
Yeah, let me show you guys what's coming up. There's some really exciting stuff, and there might actually be more than what we're mentioning. So, stay tuned with us, stay in touch with us on that. But I'll show you guys that very soon, as I have that window. There we go. Awesome. Still figuring out like the smoothest. So 4th of July sales, they're going to start tomorrow, first thing, and they are going to be running through July 11th. So you've got a lot of time to act on these. But first off, obviously it's summer, so we've got a lot of great activities that everybody's out doing. So first off on the list is going to be 20% off of all rental equipment. This is huge. If you weren't already aware, Dan's on our website, we have a massive rental pool, from cameras to lenses to lighting to a movie projector screen. So there's stuff for all sorts of different levels of gear. You know, of course, it is wedding season as well, so we've got a lot of people utilizing it for that. Graduations, a lot of people borrowed those big point and shoots that you might not necessarily want to invest in, but for that once in a lifetime opportunity, it's great to borrow something.
Well, right. Like if you're taking a vacation, you're going someplace. We talked to a bunch of people who like they've put off this. Like I talked to somebody who's doing an Africa safari and had put it off for a year and a half now. Like rent a big long lens, right? Like you're not going to use it all the time, but like for this thing, and this is perfect.
And it's also a great way to try some stuff before you buy. But it's so awesome to be able to test stuff that you wouldn't necessarily spend money on, and it winds up being really cheap. So next thing on the list.
Quick. Yep.
It's all right. Next thing on the list, we have 20% off of metallic prints. We print these from 4x6 to 12x18, so a good variety of sizes. It's got a really nice, like hyper glossy, almost I would call it pearlescent sheen. So it's going to make colors pop like fireworks or anything with lots of vibrancy or texture.
Yeah, I think we specifically talked about. We specifically talked about, hey, you got to print your fireworks photos on these. That's why we ran this particular sale.
It's the best. It is by far the best for this kind of stuff. But yeah, so next up, photo books are 25% off. So this is going to be on the Dan's photo books. These guys start at about $25 or so. We print them in 3 business days. You customize them right on our website. You can save your work. You can work on them later. But these are awesome. And behind the scenes, for those of you that have been with us for a while, we got a new machine. So everything that we've been printing on the new cardstock printer, which is what also handles our books, we're noticing way better results across the board. In some it's better skin tones, in some it's better colors, but even in just the side-by-sides that we had some older books and we're, just kind of creating some controlled samples, there's a big difference. So if you haven't done one in a while, it's a big improvement. If you've never done one, we're really excited. And they are customizable too. Last but certainly not least, we have the prepaid photo plans. These are plans where you buy into advance at a bulk rate. Those are going to be up to about 50% off of whatever that individual print would normally cost. So for example, let's say you're somebody that, I only print a couple photos every once in a while, or I've got a big project I need to get a lot done. You can prepay, for example, about $54 straight up, and you're going to get 300 4x6 prints of either glossy or matte of your choice at the beginning for you to use over any amount of time. So it never expires. Mathematically, though, it breaks down to be an insane amount of savings. So if you're somebody that says, this is the only size I print in, like ever, even if I do a couple, a month, or I only do it once or twice a year, this is great. But we have them in a couple different sizes. So yeah, those are pretty much what's going on. There might be some other stuff, so stay tuned on that, but that's what's been officially announced.
All righty. So now on to the important stuff for tonight. And this stuff is the reason why
we're having Ben on
tonight. He's got a ton of great fireworks photos that we wanted to share with you. I've got some in here. Ben's got it.
Thank you. Fireworks are something I've been super passionate about for a long time. I've been able to, photograph them at amazing locations such as Disney. We're going to talk about that a lot because for a controlled environment to go back to again and again for different results, you're going to see a lot of Disney fireworks. So sorry, not sorry, but I've been lucky enough to do stuff for the NFL with Bay Fireworks, which is one of the largest pyrotechnics companies in the country. They handle stuff for Disney, but also Cape Canaveral. They did their 15th anniversary. They've done stuff for the Olympics, MLB, NFL. So it's been a really fun ride, but I've been able to learn a lot about it, and I'm really excited to share a lot of that with you tonight.
All right. So I think before, like, it's real easy to get bogged down in the technical stuff. Like when we start talking about fireworks photos, we start talking about shutter speeds and what gear do you need and all that stuff. But I always like to start this conversation off with, first of all, thinking about location and kind of planning ahead, right? Which is what I love about this picture here. Is it's a great fireworks photo, but it's a great illustration for thinking ahead about your location.
Yeah. No,
like, I've been to Disney World before, and I know that if you want to get this picture, you got to put in a little work ahead of time, right?
You got to want it. You got to want it bad. You know, it's one of those things where you're going to communicate with everybody else that's with you. But that's any fireworks show. You know, if you really have it in your mind of like, I want this amazing photo. I don't want to do this every year, but this year I want to do something really special. Premeditate that a little bit. It so pays off, because once those fireworks have started, you can't move. You can't change location. They're going to be over way too soon, and you're just going to be kicking yourself. So planning.
And you're stuck in the middle of a crowd, right? Like you couldn't move if you wanted to.
Yeah, it was a little claustrophobic. You know, this was definitely pre-COVID, but it was by far worth it. You know, thankfully I was with some amazing people that were willing to kind of help me stake out my spot. What's great about Disney is they totally allow you to take in a tripod as long as it's something that folds up. Pretty much all of our tripods fold up to that point. But I was able to extend the column and get it above my height and, you know, above most people's heads. And we were able to crop away, you know, a couple of selfie sticks and things like that.
Right.
But planning out and having a bag that made it comfortable, that was so important.
Yeah. And this is like thinking ahead of time about what you want your picture to look like. I mean, it's easy to, you can point the camera at the sky and take a picture of fireworks, but this gives us a sense of exactly where we are. You got a sense of place, and there's a mood here, and it's
precisely
like it's a picture that has fireworks in it. It's not just here's a firework going off.
Yeah.
Which is what I love about this. Right.
There's a lot that goes into this, but it's so much fun, and you're getting to see them right off of the camera. So it just adds to the excitement, because you get a really good idea of what your photos are going to look like straight out. You know, there's pretty minimal editing, which is fun.
So, I mean, as an example, this is the kind of the picture that I'm talking about with here's some fireworks, and it's not a bad picture of fireworks, right? But like what I kind of think about is, give me a sense of the place and the people you're with and what's going on. By pulling back a little, now we've got, right, there's my family. So when we look at something like that, we've got everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Right? About how early did you have to get there in order to get that shot?
Well, we were there for, I want to say, it probably wasn't that long, but it really felt like about an hour and a half. To really stake out that dead center ideal spot. You know, and then we would kind of take turns just kind of babysitting the tripod and, you know, going to get a snack or going to get.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. So you got a whole team there. Like, I'm going to run in and grab a snack and you're going to.
I was very lucky. You know, obviously around here, we're not going to draw those kind of crowds, but you definitely want to show up early. You know, people want a good spot for this, and everybody's got a cell phone or something like that now. Oh, yeah. Or there's another photographer that staked out your spot. So you want to make sure you get there first. Right.
So you got to plan to get there. And I got a couple more pictures. Like, you've got a bunch. So what's the difference between that one and something like this one?
So this is from a slightly different show. So lighting was a little different. I wanted to use a slightly wider lens. Because part of what's supposed to happen during this show is they will actually shoot around you as well. So there were some cascading images, but this is an example of a shot where I didn't take a photo for quite as long as I should have. But the interesting effect that's really highlighted here, and there are some other photos, is when you have high humidity, so summer, it's a little humid here right now.
Right.
Smoke hangs in the air. It's just going to sit there. So that's why you have this wispy northern light kind of situation that's happening, because you're taking a photo for longer. And I'm just going to pause real quick. Guys, as you come in, thank you so much for joining us. Please comment any questions, or if you like the photo, or if you don't like the photo, that's okay too. But we want to hear from you as well.
He can take it.
I can totally take it, but I'm happy to answer any and all of your questions. So that's a really fun effect to kind of create a hazy, funky thing. It's one of those things that you're not necessarily in control of, but it is something to get excited about.
Yeah. So it's the smoke being illuminated by the fireworks.
Exactly. So this is a slightly different composition where we have smoke and not a lot of wind, both in front and behind our subject. And now you have this dreamy in the clouds kind of setup. And of course, those fireworks are coming in bright enough that they're separated in a very cool way.
Yeah. So let's take a step back to something completely different.
Good times.
What are we thinking about here? Like this is a completely different feel. And now it's not about the big spectacular thing. Like this one is almost more about
who's in it? What's the feel?
People you're hanging out with, right? Yeah.
So we have a question from Sandy. Sandy, no, I did not color the smoke. That's what happens when you are photographing fireworks. They're going to take on the colors. That's just naturally what happens. You have colored light hitting smoke. It's the same thing as a fog machine, which is really, really exciting.
Nice. Can be difficult. Yeah, for sure.
You got to want it. I mean, it's the same thing with anything around here, Steel Stacks, Music Fest, Iron Pigs. If you're, not even big into this, but you're saying, you know what, I really want to try this. If you think you want to get there, it's a show at 6:30, get there at 6 at the least, at the absolute least, plan that ahead. So this was from a private beach in Cape Cod a couple years ago. So everybody is, and we're going to revisit this beach actually for a later photo. These are all family and friends. As you can see, they're kind of moving around a little bit. That's what happens when you're taking long exposures for fireworks. You're going to capture all movement. So that's a little campfire in front of them, and they're all, kind of moving around watching the different fireworks. What's really cool about Cape Cod is it's, kind of a semicircle curve. So those fireworks that are off in the distance that are super small, those are just other people. So you were able to look at everybody's fireworks shots up and down the Cape. It was really, really cool. But this was shot with an ultra wide fisheye lens for Nikon.
Right, so we got the curve.
Kind of an old school design, but you kind of get that sense of like the curvature of the earth almost, it kind of fakes that. But that was kind of fun. It's really good to, not just photograph the firework. If you really want an emotional connection or a photo that matters, put it in its place or get the people that you love in front of the camera. It can, make for some really cool moments.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to talk about that even more tonight.
Yeah.
And then you have the perfect postcard.
So this one's one of mine. And this I think is a real good example of my example anyway, of that planning ahead, right? Like I picked a spot where I'm on the Hill to Hill Bridge. You're seeing the Fahey Bridge there, and you can see the steel stacks in the background. So I'm on the Hill to Hill Bridge, and I'm thinking about, okay, where do I want to be? I picked a spot on the bridge that's kind of between two streetlights, so I'm getting the least amount of light spill onto me.
Yeah, super important.
Kind of getting into the darkest spot that I could get, and then shooting over kind of in that direction. And I mean, there's a bunch of trial and error trying to figure out exactly what kind of a shot that I want, right? If I had wanted to shoot from the other bridge, if I wanted to be on the Fahey Bridge, we would need to be in much, much earlier. I would need to be there to stake out my spot, because that bridge is packed.
Yeah, look at all those people.
Right. Like I would need to be there an hour earlier than I was. And same thing we got going on here. There's that haze, there's that low-lying smoke, and that's kind of getting lit up by the lights and the fireworks and whatnot.
Yeah.
All right. Now here's a picture that is from the Fahey Bridge. But this was New Year's Eve. We get started a little early here in Bethlehem because they do the kids' activities and stuff. So this was like 6:30 or so. This wasn't midnight for New Year's Eve. So I was able to.
Sky.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite. Is if you can get fireworks photos in that blue hour. So the sky isn't just black; it's got that deep blue. That's one of my favorites. And if you wanted to be, good question. What lens did you use on the Hill to Hill? The same one that I used on the Fahey. I used a 10-24 zoom, but I'm about at the 24 millimeter end. back there on the Fahey Bridge, or on the Hill to Hill Bridge. When on this closer bridge, now I'm out at the 10 millimeter end to get that wide view to hold both the steel stacks and the fireworks and that whole thing in there. Good question.
That's always a big thing is, what lens do I choose? The two lenses that I will take with me are, the full frame version, essentially, which is the 17 to 28 from Tamron, or the 28 to 75, which is also from Tamron. So something that's kind of an ultra wide and something in that mid range are both great, but everybody just thinks wide, but the problem is, depending on how far you are away from your subject or the fireworks, you can make them look super teeny tiny. So there have definitely been times where the fireworks started, I miscalculated and said, "Oh, I need to switch lenses," and I'm like dashing to do that as fast as possible.
Right.
So you definitely kind of want to plan out your composition, which is another great reason to get there early.
Speaking of Blue Hour and getting there early, and this one is getting right down there at the steel stacks, right?
Yeah, you'll notice that upward angle. I'm ignoring pretty much everybody's heads in front of me. There was a huge crowd. This is, from 4th of July for the steel stacks a couple of years ago. I want to say 2018, and just so much fun. Thank you. This is with the, what did I use at the time? This was the Nikon 14 to 24. But again, an ultra wide lens. I knew that I was going to be down there. I didn't want to focus on just on the fireworks. I wanted the steel stacks too. So that's kind of why they're off in the corner, which makes for a fun composition. But, I definitely had another lens with me, but we were kind of in the throng of it. So, I had a buddy that was, I had my cousin standing next to me, just kind of being a blocker next to my tripod. I definitely have my ear directly under my tripod. Safety is like, you don't want to bump into someone or something like that.
Right.
But definitely just kind of creating an angle where it looks like no one's there. That was kind of what we were going for here.
Right. All right. So one more example for some advanced planning. Why don't you tell us about what's going on here and how you set up this shot? Because this is a
very special photo. I could talk about this all day, every day. To date, this is probably the most important photo I've taken. This is probably the hardest lens. Oh, Rich, real quick. So no, you actually don't need a fast lens. So I mentioned those lenses because that's just what I own. You're actually going to be increasing your aperture to some areas. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, such as like f8, f11. So if you've got a lens that's not a 2.8 or a 1.8, that doesn't matter.
Totally fine. Yep.
If anything, you might see a little bit of a difference in sharpness, but it's really about how much your lens can see. So what's great about fireworks, this is not a big budget activity. It's more just about being in the right place and having the right recipe. So it's very approachable. Good question though. And that's also why the rental program being on sale is so huge. So borrow stuff, treat yourself. So this
get that 10 to 24 for the weekend.
Exactly. Go crazy. Why not? And if you're not sure what you would want to rent from us, call. We'll walk you through the whole thing. So this is in Epcot and Disney World. This was from a few years ago when I proposed to my fiance, Haley. So this is a shot that involves both wireless triggering, because you'll notice I'm in front of the camera. And of course, I'm a control freak, so someone else isn't shooting the photo. I'm taking this photo. There's a trigger in my back pocket that I set up. We also have flash that was on the camera. So I'm using a MagMod system on a flash to light us properly. And then I have the camera on a tripod, and this was with an ultra wide lens set vertically. So we had to get there ahead of time. And this was all a surprise, by the way, so keep that in mind. There was a lot of Jedi mind tricking involved from about July or October to make this seem somewhat normal. So with fireworks, you're taking a long exposure photo, so light or any kind of movement is going to show. So I think there's a photo somewhere else in here where you're going to see what that movement looks like. But we had to set it manually where it was locked on us. So I said, hey, let me just go set up the camera. I put this all under the guise of, it's for Dan's, it's a work thing. This will be a teaching thing. It's a really technical shot. It's fine. And then we'll just enjoy the night. It's fine. I love you, you know, please and thank you. Thank you for letting me have this photo on this VIP private balcony. You know, we'll get back to it. So set up focus, have the camera on a tripod. It's locked on us, not them. But if you pinch and zoom on the photo, if you were going to, you'll notice that everything is tack sharp, even the people's heads in front of us. But any shots that we weren't kissing, we were just a blurry mess. You know, so I had to kind of almost hold her still. And
1001, 1002, 1003.
Exactly. So the photos, thankfully I have this all on video too, but the photos where I actually get down on one knee, we're just a blurry mess because she just goes, what are you doing? You know, kind of thing. But I was more worried about getting this shot than her actually saying yes. But a lot of planning was involved with this. Thankfully, this is also a show. So one of the things that I did was I watched it on YouTube over and over and over again to know when would be a good time to start talking, you know, start my speech, you know, ask her to marry me, make sure that she can hear me. And then as soon as she would say yes or somewhere in there, shells would start going off, because this is also a show that utilizes water as well, which is cool. But as you can see, those water fountains are really tiny. So we wanted to make sure that we were lining up that shot correctly. You know, so there's a lot of outtakes from this, but you know, you're looking for that one perfect decisive moment.
Right. That's a really interesting tip though. Like if it's something like the 4th of July display here in Bethlehem, you get what you get. But if it's something like you're taking that family trip to Disney, you can look ahead of time at what those shows look like.
Yeah.
And kind of get an idea of what you want to get a picture of.
And there are tons of people more nerdy and dedicated than me that will take 4K video and you can watch it over and over again to figure out like, oh, that would be cool. You know, and you can kind of figure out, okay, you know, I'm going to start taking a photo at this time or whatever. You know what, after I get that shot, I could probably put away my camera.
Right.
But another one, you know, if it's not a big show, if you're at, let's say the Iron Pigs, they love their fireworks displays. They do some great ones, but they put music behind them. Any great song, they're going to do a lot of popular stuff that many people would recognize. And anything that's like a good bass line, you can best believe that they're going to synchronize those fireworks in a way that it's going to go off at exactly those moments. So you can kind of decide, oh, okay, they're playing Eye of the Tiger. That big bass line in the beginning, the bam, 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 bam. Imagine that. You can kind of anticipate like, oh, okay, there's music playing. Oh, I know this song. Something cool will come up, or you kind of anticipate a finale or whatever. So it's those are all good things, you know, because these pyrotechnic companies now, the work that they put out, it is so much cooler these days.
All right, so we've been talking about long exposures and we were talking about some lens choice and stuff, but I think the one piece of gear that we need to take a look at is, it is definitely tripod time, right?
This is the MVP.
So we're not hand holding. I've got my little guy here, and this is like, you don't need a huge one, right? It's just got to be something that is going to hold the camera still. All right.
Yeah, super important.
Because we're going to be doing those long exposures. And a quick refresher, if anybody is not 100% on what we're talking about long shutter speeds. We're talking about when the shutter opens and closes to expose the sensor to light. Anything that moves while the shutter is open is going to be a blur, right? So it's the thing that takes a waterfall and changes it from, at a relatively fast shutter speed, being able to see every individual little drop of water, to a longer, slower shutter speed where all those things, as they're cascading down across the rocks, all blur together, right? So we're talking about a shutter speed that is going to be several seconds long. If the camera moves during that time, now the whole picture's blurry. So having things locked down, 100% vital for this thing. A decent tripod, probably more important than like the latest, greatest, fastest lens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, if your tripod isn't very stable, or can at least be made stable, it's all for naught. You know, you don't need an expensive lens. You don't need an expensive camera. You do want to make sure that your tripod is good. And that's not to say that it's an expensive tripod. It just needs to not be rickety.
Yeah, this one's many years old at this point. It's an older ProMaster carbon fiber jobby, but it's small enough that it just clips onto my bag and is light enough that I don't mind it too much. So that when the family all went out to the beach to watch the fireworks, because they do fireworks every week at the beach,
Cool.
I could bring this with me. I could just kind of set it down there and frame all my relatives in the shot there in the foreground with some fireworks going off in the back. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a tripod. I didn't happen to have the tripod with me this particular night. Same beach, different year. My wife's family goes up there every summer, so it's aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody.
Great shot.
And I wandered out there to get this picture, but I didn't have a tripod, so there's a fence post. And it's sitting on a fence post. If you look right, like you can see the fence is down here. I'm sitting on a fence post. I just parked the camera there. Kind of frame up my shot again, kind of trying to tilt upward a little bit and like cram a penny or something under there to give it a little tilt upward.
Yep.
Right. And then just take a few shots, and it's going to be a bit of trial and error and just let a few go off. This was about 10 seconds worth of exposure, but that concrete post wasn't going anywhere, so it was fine.
Yeah. And that's a 10-second photo. I mean, think about how long. At what point of the explosion do you think is best to take the photo? Wow. Susan, really good question.
Yeah.
So it's not at the point in the explosion. So if you look at this photo, this is a great example of kind of just, just a clean shot. If you look at the bottom where they're coming, so we would call those the trails. So during a fireworks show, you're just going to keep shooting. You're just going to keep shooting the whole time. Some people set their camera on a timer. Me personally, I do like to be in control of it for those music shots or things like that, or, to just kind of take a break because I know there might be like a dead spot or something like that. You want to be pretty much taking a picture as soon as you hear the boom of it coming off the ground, because you want that launch. Usually you want that launch, and then you want that, that fallout, that explosion from the shell. If you're taking a photo and it's exploding, it's too late. You're going to see a very tiny little thing, on your camera. So you'll figure out within the first 3 to 5 photos immediately how to dial it in for the rest of the show. But if it's a show like this where you can see the actual launch site, you'll hear or see I don't know how else to explain it. That
when the thing goes off. Yep.
And then from there, you just keep going. Me, I'm kind of at the point where as soon as I hear that, I can actually start counting in my head, because based on the show or where it is, I've been photographing fireworks for such a long time. I can pretty much guess, within 3 to 6 seconds, it's going to fire off, because they want it to go off at a specific size and distance from everybody else.
Right. All right. So that's a great question that kind of leads right into, we do have to take a minute to talk about the technical stuff.
Yep.
So for my camera settings, this is one of the few times anymore that I actually have my camera on completely manual.
Yep.
It is actually I don't want people to be intimidated by setting your camera on that big M, because this is actually the easiest way to do this. Everything else, any of the more automatic modes, you're probably going to struggle.
Oh, absolutely. You will not get what you're looking for.
Yeah. But fireworks are a known quantity, right? Like, we know exactly what fireworks look like. You can use basically the same settings in any sort of fireworks situation. You're going to set your ISO to its lowest setting. Remember, we're using very long shutter speeds here, so light isn't really a concern. Yeah, you're shooting in the dark, but you don't need to be at ISO 6400. So 100 or 200, whatever your camera's base ISO is going to be fine. And then, like Ben mentioned, we're going to set our aperture right around the middle, right around f11, which seems counterintuitive again, because we're taking pictures in the dark, but fireworks are bright.
Yep.
And the fireworks are the things we're photographing. From there, you're going to set your shutter speed. Try around 5 seconds. I usually like 8 to 10 seconds, depending on how many bursts you want in the photo, how long of a trail you're looking for. And then from there, it's kind of going to be trial and error. Right? Like, if you want more going on in the picture, try a longer shutter speed to spread things out. If you run a very long shutter speed and things are getting too bright, close down the aperture another stop and see how that goes. It's really just going to be a seasoned taste at this point. But if you write down these settings and just lock this stuff down, this is going to be a real good starting point for you. If
And
you've
it's
never
almost-
shot manual before, this is going to be a great introduction to doing it yourself.
Yep. This is, I mean, as far as manual stuff goes, this is probably one of the most straightforward recipes that exists. You know, because there's not a lot of it depends, you know. You're going to see immediately whether something works or not, but there are some set rules. So, you know, making your camera less sensitive to light and allowing it to take a photo for longer is really what you're focusing on.
And then the other technical thing that we had to talk about with regard to camera settings is how we're going to focus on a big patch of black sky.
Yeah.
This is a thing that I see all the time is you point your camera up at the sky and you go to focus and it won't focus and then it won't take a picture and you wind up frustrated. Lock down your focus first by focusing on, in this case, I would focus on the band shell, the building back here in the distance.
Yep.
Use that to focus on. It's going to be a nice, strong contrast. Your camera will have no problem grabbing focus back here. Once it's focused, you got it. You have to press the shutter button. It focuses back there. Turn autofocus on your camera off. Go to manual focus and don't touch it. You're focused. You don't need to refocus, and you're set.
A lot of the lenses that you guys will be looking at to borrow, if you're doing this with an actual lens, will have that as a physical switch, and they will also have it in the camera. So you'll have two different ways to turn that off. If you guys are renting something, ask us, you know, like, hey, this is what I'm photographing. Do I, you know, what's the switch or whatever, if you're really uncomfortable with it. But yeah, like Scott said, having manual focus is absolutely crucial here. You can't forget to do that.
Yeah, because the thing you're trying to photograph isn't there most of the time. So you can't possibly focus on it.
Exactly.
Now, a lot of the stuff we've talked about, we've kind of assumed interchangeable lens camera, but compact cameras work for this as well. Like we said, it's not super technical and it's not super gear heavy to get these pictures. First of all, if your compact camera has a fireworks scene mode, use it.
Yeah.
And you're set, right? You still have to lock it down on a tripod, but you're going to be in good shape. If there is no fireworks setting, then we need to force your camera to use a long exposure somehow. And so now we might have to trick it into doing something or get a longer shutter speed. So again, if you can set your ISO manually, you're going to set it as low as it will go. If you've got an S mode, use that. Then you're going to just go ahead and set your shutter speed right around, you know, 5 to 10 seconds, wherever we said that was going to go. You're going to go to your smallest aperture number. If you don't have a shutter, then you can do aperture number and whatever is the biggest aperture. If you can go to f11, if you can go to f16, that should try forcing it to use a longer shutter speed. So we've locked down the ISO, locked down the aperture, if it's not going to have an S mode, right?
I do see we have a question. Carol Morris said, how about bulb for shutter? So the reason we don't want to do that is because bulb, it might seem like a good idea, but you're literally in control of the click and the click again for it to stop the photo. That kind of throws itself for consistency. So if you're trying to figure out, okay, what I need, you would literally have to be standing there going, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's a lot to juggle. And you don't need to take that long of an exposure. You don't want to do something crazy long. You want to get individual clusters of fireworks, not everything, because the other issue is that it just won't turn out. So, you know, really starting at about 5 to 16, 15 seconds is really the setup. And that's going to exist on all cameras. If your camera has bulb, that's going to exist after 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. We don't need to go that big. So that would actually make your problem, your goal harder. So
I remember using bulb in the film days when my camera didn't allow me to set a 10-second exposure.
Exactly.
Right. But I found it so much easier to just say, dial in 10 seconds or 15 seconds or 6 seconds or whatever I need it to be. And then just kind of just let it go. Like, okay, they're going to launch some fireworks, hit the button and hands off. Good question, though, because I did used to use bulb, again, back in the film days, and I didn't have a shutter speed that was 10 seconds on my old camera.
Yeah, it's another thing to, you know, juggle, and it's just not necessary these days, which is great.
Yeah. One last tip on the compact cameras, probably turn down the overall brightness. By default, your camera is going to try to give you an averaged out middle gray sort of exposure. We want the exposure to be dark, right? If your pictures are coming out too bright, you're not seeing a dark, deep black in the sky, you're not seeing rich, saturated color, take your exposure adjustment and turn it down, maybe 2 or 3 stops at least.
Yep.
It is even possible to do this on your phone. If your phone is your primary camera, you can totally do this. Specifically, though, we need to find a way to force it to use that long shutter speed. That's the key ingredient here, right? So if your phone doesn't allow you manual control over your shutter speed by default, guess what? There's an app for that. You can grab yourself a camera app that allows you some manual control, and then you can dial in that long shutter speed and get the exposure where you're going to need it to be. You do still need a tripod. And in this case, I pull the little camera mount off my selfie stick. I got a selfie stick. I'm not proud, but I've got one.
What are you doing with a selfie stick? I mean, really.
But the little clippy phone holder at the top
They
comes
are
off, and then I can
so
stick it on
popular.
whatever tripod, right? Like even if it's, you know, this little Gorilla Pod that I can clamp to a rail someplace.
I was gonna say, I know I've got one of those floating around here somewhere too. What's great is that little mobile tripod accessory to actually, you know, put your phone or whatever on a tripod that you might already own or something else. We always pretty much have them in stock, and they're like $15.
Yeah, they're perfectly reasonable. Works. It's great. All right, so let's get the technical stuff out of the way. Well, I think we've hit all the technical stuff. Is there any other technical bits that you want to make sure that you impart to our honored guests?
Shooting raw. You know,
Shooting raw.
you know, if you're somebody that's comfortable or is looking to edit your photos in general, and you're comfortable with what you need for raw photography, you know, we also teach a class in Lightroom. Selfish plug, but we do. You know, these are very bright objects, and you're photographing things that might be in darkness besides it. It's really fun to be able to pull the shadows out a little bit and, you know, have the ability to kind of tweak that. So that's really important.
Right. Do a little highlight recovery, pull detail out of the shadows. Yeah,
it
absolutely.
really makes a huge difference. I mean, I do minimal editing, but I'm still editing to get a very specific result, because cameras are amazing, but they're still nowhere near what our eyes can see. You know, so I'm going for a particular look.
All right, so let's take a look at a couple more composition things in terms of trying to avoid maybe a little bit of tunnel vision. I love this. This was from Steve Miller. Oh, we got another question. Remote shutter release. Yeah, not a terrible idea.
You can. You absolutely can.
Yeah. To keep you from having to push the button, you can just kind of stand back and click the remote release.
Yeah, you know, if the fireworks are somewhere else, or maybe you still want to, I don't know, be with your family and just be like, okay, click, you know, have it in your pocket. You can totally do that. Just in the world of, you know, what can go wrong, I might also suggest a wired one. You know, there's no way for that to get screwed up, but they're wireless remotes, you know, that exist for loads of different cameras. We sell a whole thing. You know, that can allow you to be a little farther away. Me personally, that engagement photo was with a wireless setup, but you best believe I tested it at about 30 different times to make sure it would not fail. You know, it's the what ifs. You know, if you're just focusing on taking photos and stuff like that, this is not an area of photography where you have to use a you know, a release of some kind. You can do it by hand. You can do it with a remote trigger or a wired trigger. It's really up to you.
Right. Yeah, like I know when we talk about astrophotography, things get a little more technical and a little more involved, but this is a pretty approachable subject.
Yeah.
So this is a photo from Steve Miller. Steve shot a ton over at the Valley Preferred Cycling Center, the Velodrome, where we're going to have a workshop coming up. And I love this photo of his because it's a great example of, okay, here's what it would look like if I'm just taking a picture of the fireworks, but here's giving me a sense of the place that I'm in.
So much more important.
This is a fantastic shot. I really like this one.
Yeah.
And
this is a photo that's sellable. I mean, you're giving a place value. If someone's emotionally attached to this place, that just got way cooler. If you're a business and you maybe have something of that, or I don't know, if you own the steel stacks and you need better photos of the steel stack, I use what I have at my availability. This is super important. So this is a great example of that.
Yeah. And composition, this falls right in line with our old friend, the rule of thirds.
Yes.
Right? You can kind of keep that rule of thirds idea in mind. We've got the fireworks going on in the right-hand third. We've got the foreground in the lower third. It just frames up really nicely. And another thing that I really like about this picture is that last little bit of fading twilight in the picture. I know we've talked about that. It's just one of my favorite things. There's another one of yours, and that's just spectacular. The gold against the blue is just great.
Thank you. Yeah, this was actually last year. I'm very lucky to have access to this wonderful cabin in New York. So it was kind of a private thing for family and friends. So I was able to get very close to this. That launch site, that mortar site, is 15, 20 feet away. That's the thing about ultra wide lenses.
How wide is this lens? What were you shooting with?
I was shooting vertically with the Tamron 17-28.
Okay.
What this doesn't show is, because of how wide it is, it doesn't really give you a sense of how close this mortar was to over my head.
Yeah.
So this was not my wisest move. However, anybody that knows me well knows absolutely that I have no regard for personal safety when it comes to getting the shot.
I think a lot of us suffer from that particular disorder.
I've
been accused of, yeah.
I've been yelled at more than once by quite a few people over the years but I'm like, yeah, but look, and they're like,
but I gotta get the shoot right.
But that rhino is right behind you,
Right.
So this was, shooting up into that sky. But yeah, this time of day, the days are really long. My dream shot for this is going to be to have a couple on that dock with me and lighting them with flash, because now I know how to do that. For the perfect engagement photo. But absolutely getting a sense of being able to edit your stuff, being able to pull the shadows out of that dock so you get a little bit of the sense of what's going on. And you've got just that last fading light is gorgeous. I mean, there's a lot of shots from that night that were wonderful, but take the opportunity to figure out where the fireworks are going to be and place yourself for that. So, obviously this was a private thing that I was able to do, something that otherwise I probably would have gotten in a lot of trouble for, considering how close I was. But it does bring up a very important point of, figure out what you want to frame in the shot, but more importantly, figure out where the launch site is if you can. Steel stacks is one that really throws people off because it's not at the steel stacks, it's across the river, and it's framed in a particular way. So my next big tip on great fireworks photos and composition is, if it's a public show or something like that, like a fair or, any of the multiple events that we have, call whatever the local fire department is. They're going to know where the fireworks are because they're going to be there. Depending on how high profile the thing is, they might not want to give you an exact idea. So maybe you can look at photos from past years and kind of plan it. There's usually a very good chance that launch sites don't change because they need to be safe as far as their parameters. But figure out where your launch is so that, you get there, you frame your shot, and then all of a sudden, oh, they're over there. Oh, we have a problem. That's a big one. So, do that little bit of extra research.
Right, like where you're placing the fireworks in relation to the landscape. And
exactly. For some, it's a no-brainer, but, for something like that, where it might be a little bit of a smaller thing or a family thing, figure out where the launch site's going to be.
Right. So speaking of both twilight and then framing out your composition, we're going to head back down to the House of Mouse.
Yeah. This isn't the first time that we've talked about this photo. We talked about this during our What's in My Travel Bag scenario. So I'm using a Joby GorillaPod here. This is back at Epcot, which is the other park. I'm actually on an outside deck at one of their restaurants. And I set this up probably about half hour before the show. Had a nice little flight of sake with me, so that was lovely while I waited. But I decided,
Very nice.
Obviously I'm not on a full-size tripod. If you look underneath my camera is a Joby GorillaPod that is wrapped around the cross beams of this deck. So the only thing that matters is it's just rock solid.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big investment thing. And then just kind of figuring out what I'm focusing on, figuring out daylight, what's going to be there, what might not. Sometimes
that little bendy GorillaPod is a fantastic. Like that fits right in your camera bag, right? Like that just goes in a pocket, and then you can clamp it to whatever.
And like the one that you're holding, that's going to be great for a point and shoot for a phone.
Yep.
But
yeah, well, that's all I use that one for.
The one I have is the Joby GorillaPod 5K, which we do sell in the store. It's got a ball head, so I can kind of tilt, but it's good enough to hold a full size camera.
Yeah.
I'm not touching that camera, and there's a good chunk of change sitting on the deck of a restaurant with a 20-foot drop below it.
Right.
So make sure that you're investing in something you trust. I mean, these are the things that we don't want to cut corners on, because push comes to shove, there was no other way to get this shot without a full-size tripod.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad I invested in that thing, because it paid for itself immediately, because the photo that comes after this is, as of right now, my favorite fireworks shot. And it's also the last fireworks shot I took, because this was in March, right as COVID was kind of coming to a head with everything shutting down. So this was the last time I was, in one of my favorite places on earth. But I have this shot to remember it by. But now you get to kind of see the behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and okay, so you've planned out, where the fireworks are launching from. Those foreground elements that you're placing to give us a sense of where we are. We got that last fading bit of daylight. Like everything is kind of coming together in this picture. Look, we even got Spaceship Earth down there in the lower left corner.
Yeah, the golf ball for us plebes. And what's great is, there's a lot of detail here, because, it's just so sharp. And printing it and stuff like that is so much more affordable. So I'm definitely going to be making a point of putting this on the metallic paper, because I think I can probably hang another photo. Susan, so this is going to be, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but this is the Tamron 17-28 for this shot. So this was an ultra wide lens. I did crop in a little bit. I made the decision to bring it a little tighter. The pagoda that was off to the right, if we go back to the shot behind us, the behind the scene shot, you'll notice that there's that gorgeous pagoda. But you know what? If I gave as much attention as I wanted to for the pagoda, the actual fireworks themselves wouldn't have been as important, and I wanted that to be more the focus here. So, again, getting there early to kind of plan it out and make those decisions, so I'm not trying to change my mind creatively while the fireworks are going off.
Yeah, like you can frame it up ahead of time and say, okay, I know they're going to be here. How do these other elements look?
Yeah.
What do I want this shot to look like? Do I include more, or do I include, but well before the fireworks are actually going off?
If you have to decide, like, okay, I'm trying to photograph fireworks, and I only have the choice of one lens. Not that that's ever the case, but if that's really your situation, an ultra wide lens is probably going to be the safest, because you can crop stuff away, you can't make more. So that's good. But yeah, thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. This is definitely one of my favorites. So I'm happy to share it with you guys.
Oh, yeah, what a killer shot. And again, like, this is the kind of thing that looks great on that metallic paper that we were talking about, because you got all that shiny stuff, and on metallic paper, it actually is shiny. It just, like, I love it for stuff like this.
It pops for sure. So, not the same quality as the other photographs. So another really important thing, there are these things in fireworks called finales. And usually what happens during that time is, you've got your settings dialed in for all those fireworks, and all of a sudden they just decide to fire all torpedoes. When the finale starts going off, turn your camera off. Go enjoy the show. You're not going to be able to get it. There's too much light coming in. I mean, a lot of us have been to those shows, where so many are going off that they practically simulate daylight for a second. you're almost photographing the sun at this point. You know, it's not bright enough that it'll hurt your camera. So I do just want to make a point of saying that. But unless you're doing some extra nerdy technical stuff, you are not going to get a finale shot. That's go enjoy
your pictures.
Be with
Sit
your
back
people.
and enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be over before you know it. And if the last year has taught us anything, you don't know when your next fireworks are going to be.
Yeah. All right. So we've got a bunch of great tips for fireworks. Now for extra credit, we're going to try some funky stuff. For starters, you can get some weird effects by moving the lens around. This is changing the focus during the exposure. By knowing, okay, if this is where it's in focus and I'm manually focusing my lens, start with it out of focus and pull it into focus as the burst is exploding.
Oh, yeah.
So those guys are blurry and they come out to sharp points through the exposure.
That's amazing.
The heck have you got going on here?
Shenanigans. That's what's going on here. Remember I said we would revisit that private beach? So what's great about private locations is you can do stuff that would be maybe frowned upon, you know, in public areas. I'm not going to be doing this on Main Street in Bethlehem. So this is steel wool that I then lit on fire. But to create this effect, in the middle of that vortex is me. I'm wearing a hoodie that I don't care about. And I have the whole thing essentially. What did I do for this? I went to the hardware store. I got a piece of insulated copper wiring. So something thick enough that I could bend. And I pretty much just took a bunch of really fine steel wool, you know, the really thin stuff. And I just bunched it all together, kind of wrapped it around this thing, and I just lit it on fire and I started spinning. You know, it's really, really fun. And obviously you can create different movements and all sorts of funky stuff. You definitely want to wear clothes that you don't care about. You know, you might get a singe hole or
singe marks on you.
They're really fine sparks though, so you really don't have to worry about anything hurting you or anything like that. But obviously it is a fire hazard.
Right.
So this was done on a beach that we combed out first. There was absolutely nothing going on. I think we actually did some shots later in the night where I was like standing in the water. But it didn't quite turn out the way that we wanted because the waves were like knocking me, you know. But you can create all sorts of really cool stuff with this. So if you have access to a place where you can, you know, do this safely, it's a lot of fun.
No place where there's a fire hazard or a fire warning or any of that kind of thing because you're throwing sparks all over the place. But I guess standing out on a bunch of sand is probably okay.
Yeah. The other place I've seen this, I won't give exact places because, you know, the legality is under question, but any kind of urban environment where you've got a lot of brick or a lot of stone or any place that
pavement
has a small tunnel, you know, because it's going to kind of act like liquid. It'll show shape. So if you did this, yeah, exactly. You'll do this in a place, you know, like a small tunnel or something like that and spin it in front of you. It'll take on the shape of the tunnel. So, you know, if you're in a place where you know you can do this safely, it's a really, really fun thing.
Right. But now we're out into light painting kind of stuff here.
Exactly. You know, and the more basic, fun, safe, approachable thing is sparklers. You know, everybody likes sparklers. This was a couple years ago. This was kind of a fun shot. What's great is the only light that's coming out of this photo is of those sparklers. And the way that we nailed focus on this was I had them all stand in a straight line. You know, so that was kind of interesting trying to, you know, wrangle a bunch of my friends into a straight line. I'm like, come on, I promise it'll be fun. I had one of them just kind of turn on their phone so that I could see something in the dark to focus on. And then I think we did this in like 2 tries. The trick was getting them all to light within some frame of exact time. And then I just said, you know, do your shape just over and over again. Just try and visualize it for yourself. We had one person that did one of the letters backwards. They shall remain nameless. But third time was the charm. And this was a really fun one. It's a great thing to do with kids. They love it. They get to see that photo immediately. It's
like here, write your name with the sparkler.
I've seen people do it for wedding photos. Sparkler send-offs are really popular. So there's a lot of creative possibilities with these, and they're safe, and you know you can pretty much use them anywhere. But if you understand how to shoot fireworks, it's the exact same concept.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's about it. I think we've hit anything else. Any final thoughts to leave us with, or any questions from anybody who's watching that you want to pitch out there before we take off?
Yeah, please. Any questions? I'm going to hit two techie things that are kind of an enhancement. But yeah, please, YouTube, Facebook, please, if you have any questions, or if you're watching this later after the fact, leave a comment. I will still respond. All right. So the two last things. So a lot of lenses these days have a vibration compensation, or VR.
Yes.
So VC, some sort of, you're so welcome, Terry. Some sort of stabilization. Turn it off. You're on a tripod. You do not want your lens compensating for movement that is not there. Right. What you will find is you will have less sharpness. The other thing along the same line, as more and more of us move into mirrorless, not only are your lenses stabilized in a lot of cases, a lot of our cameras are. So Olympus, Canon now has it, Nikon has it, Sony, of course, has it. I don't know if Fuji has it.
Yeah.
They do have it. So any kind of in-body stabilized camera, it'll be in there as a setting. You need to turn in-body stabilization off.
Yep, gotta hit.
And that's the same concept for any long exposure stuff. So fireworks, sparklers, normal long exposures, street lights, waterfalls, astrophotography, you need to turn that off. If you're using a good tripod, that's in place of stabilization. All right.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing all those insights, behind the scenes stuff.
It was totally my pleasure.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. So I want everybody to go out and get some great pictures this weekend. The weather looks like it's going to be okay. We're actually having some fireworks. It's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. And share some pictures with us. Get on our Facebook group, because we would love to see the pictures you're getting, or tag us on Instagram. Show us some of the pictures that you get. If you used any of these tips, let us know. And I hope you see you next time. We will be off next week, but coming back the week after that, Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. You can always find us here. You can always watch the replays on YouTube. And that is going to do it for us tonight.
Have a great night, guys. Thank you so
much.
much,
everybody.